Ladies and gentlemen, today our goal is going to be easy. We are going to be ranking the best Pokemon main series games based on my opinions after having played them for, I would say a good portion of my life. Now, the games aren't in any particular order, but I did try to make sure to at least match them up by games. So first up on the chopping block is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Now, when these games came out, I do remember that there was a bit of excitement over, Hoenn remakes, because I know Hoenn was a very cherished game for a lot of people. Emerald is probably one of the best games, which we will get to later, of course. But in terms of how good they were as remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire just were not that good in my opinion. As pure games, I think they were alright. They did come from Generation 6, which introduced Mega Evolution. I do think a lot of the Mega Evolutions in this game were really awesome and really helpful for the game as a whole. But unfortunately, I would probably have to put Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire somewhere politely in C tier for now. So moving on, we've got Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. Some more recent entries, some of the first Switch Pokemon games as well. These games are a bit of an outlier, and the reason for that is obviously because they do not play like most other main series games, but I will consider them main series games in this scenario because I feel like they're close enough to fit that bill. As a whole, if you're a die-hard Pokemon fan, these games probably will not be for you. Even though I'm not someone who really enjoys Gen 1 all that much, I do think Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu aren't too bad. For now, we're going to go ahead and be putting Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu in high C tier. Next up, we have Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the last 3DS titles. For me, this is an easy S tier. I think Ultra Moon and Ultra Sun are honestly really incredible. When I played them, I remember loving every single second of my playthrough. I remember not being able to put the games down. I thought the boss battles were really fun. I loved Generation 7 Pokemon. I actually really enjoyed the story and the characters, even if, maybe it's not as deep as you would like it. I really loved the post-game content with the Rainbow Rocket. I think that was incredible, and I really liked how it was almost a payoff and homage to all the games that had come before, specifically, on the handheld devices now that we're moving forward with the Switch era. All in all, I'll be leaving Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon in the S tier because I just genuinely think that they are that good and worthy of that spot. Moving backwards, we have Base Sun and Base Moon up next. Now, even though I just sung my praises about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I really think that the differences and the addition of post-game content and Necrozma story that Ultra Sun had, I really think it makes the difference. And when I say makes a difference, I really do mean that because I honestly think Sun and Moon are, at best, a high B tier. I do enjoy the games, but I do think the early game can be a bit slow. Sun and Moon, B tier. Not as good as Ultra Sun and Moon. Moving on. Leaf Green, Fire Red. Pretty good games, honestly. My only problem with these games is that they are from Generation 1. Now, this might be a bit of a hot topic for most. Really don't like Generation 1. I think a lot of the designs are admittedly kind of boring, bland, lazy. I think the story is kind of unremarkable. My favorite parts about the story are kind of just the characters themselves. Admittedly, I think Blue is one of my favorite champions and rivals of all time. I actually really like him, but that's an extremely minimal part of the games as a whole. Now, in terms of Generation 1 games, even though Leaf Green and Fire Red are technically Gen 3, but I see them as Kanto games, really. I do think Leaf Green and Fire Red are pretty good. I would safely put them probably in C tier. Yeah, I'd put them safely in C tier above Let's Go and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I feel like that's kind of fair for how I feel about the games. I think they're pretty fun. They were some of my first games I also played as well. I played through Fire Red pretty early on. I'm tired of Kanto. Let's get over it. And even though I'm tired of Kanto, we do have to rank Red, Blue, and Yellow next. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think Yellow is worse than Red and Blue, so this is honestly kind of the order that I'm going to go with no matter what. I feel like Yellow is just too much of a gimmick for me to really enjoy, and Red and Blue have the unfortunate fate of being the first Pokemon games made, which means that they have a lot of problems with them. Now, I'm all for liking what you like and enjoying the things that you enjoy no matter what anyone says, but I really do think that there are a lot of fundamental flaws with Generation 1 that just make them not as enjoyable to play. Things like accuracy not working, psychic types being broken, the fact that a lot of ideas just weren't really thought out and implemented properly. I don't see Generation 1 as being this end-all be-all generation that so many people seem to hype it up as. So for me, Generation 1 has got to be low C tier. And it does border on D tier. I will say it does border on D tier, but I do give it some stock in the fact that some of my favorite Pokemon are from Generation 1. Honestly, the below tiers, they're only really there for a few games in particular. So let's go ahead and get on with those few games in particular. Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Now, I feel strongly about Generation 1. I think Generation 1 is pretty broken. I think Generation 1 is maybe a bit bland, but a lot of that can be excused by the fact that it is the first games that Game Freak made. Generation 2, however, were not the first game, they were the second. And you'd hope that at some point, some parts of these games would get vastly improved, and unfortunately it didn't. Just to kind of rapid fire, I think Gen 2 Johto as a whole is just really slow. It's even more bland story-wise than Kanto. The fact that they had to supplement this game's content by adding the entire Kanto region in, it just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, and I've never really been one to enjoy these games. I do think Crystal is the best version of it, definitively. I mean, it makes sense. Even despite that, I would have to put Crystal in D tier, and Gold and Silver are riding high at F tier. Now, I should mention, since we finally hit the F tier, I do not think that any Pokemon games are super inherently bad games, but since we are making this tier list relative to Pokemon games as a whole, I do think that we have to be realistic, and I realistically see Gold and Silver as being the worst Pokemon games currently to date. Moving right ahead to a bit of a more positive note, we have Black 2 and White 2 on the chopping block, and you might be wondering why I didn't do White and Black first. Well, that is simply because I think Black 2 and White 2 are worse. They will be sitting in the A tier. Now, I absolutely adored Generation 5. I love Black 2, I love White 2. I think the stories are really fun. I think the additional content in these games that separated them from the previous was really worthwhile. It really made playing through the Unova region again worthwhile, and I just had a lot of fun with these games. I feel like expanding the Pokedex really made for a lot more diverse teams in this game, and it was just an overall fun playthrough. I can't really fault it for too much. I really wish that they would have played around a little bit more with the 3 years later aspect of the story, but all in all, they're solid games, and I'd recommend them to every Pokemon fan who hasn't played them yet, if you somehow haven't. But next up, two games that for me have honestly reached peak potential of Pokemon games, Black and White. And I sing this game high praises because, well, I believe that they're incredible, and as a result, they're gonna be sitting at the top of our S tier. Black and White introduced us to the Unova region and Generation 5, and were met with not so positive reactions from the fan base. I remember hearing about these games coming out, and being a admittedly smaller kid when I was playing them, I didn't really mind about what other people said. I just saw this new Pocket Monsters game that I could enjoy and have a lot of fun with, and I did. It was probably one of the first Pokemon games that I actually really invested myself into, because I was old enough to sort of understand everything that was going on. It was also one of the first games that introduced my younger self to games that had a similar, darker tone to this one. And unfortunately, it did meet a lot of negative reactions from fans, mostly due to the Pokemon designs. I think Generation 5 was really a big step forward. It really showed Game Freak that they can really try harder with the games and the stories that they're making, and I'm really glad that these games were as good as they were, because it will always show Pokemon fans and Pokemon as a whole that we have something really great to look up to. I could rant about Generation 5 all day, but luckily we are finished with that, so let's just go ahead and move on with Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. Now, these are probably the hardest games for me to rank, because personally, I adored Pokemon X and Y. Hot off the tails of Generation 5, Pokemon X and Y hit me with a new way to experience Pokemon, this time on the 3DS. They were the first entries in the series playable on the 3DS, and they were also the first games to introduce us to the world of Mega Evolution. Again, when I first played these games, I was extremely young, and I love these games. I personally played Y myself, but I have also played X. All in all, I do understand where people are coming from when they kind of diss these games. Maybe they were easy, maybe they weren't. Maybe the EXP share across all your Pokemon was a bit of a busted thing, but you could also take your Pokemon out of your party, so it wouldn't matter. So I don't really care about that, but as a young kid, that was never something that really mattered to me. What mattered to me was, were the Pokemon in this game cool to look at, fun to use, and was the battling fun to do? And honestly, yes, I would answer yes to all those questions every single time. I really think that X and Y and Kalos as a whole tried something new, especially because they had to breach the path into the 3DS series. All in all, because of what they did, I would have to put them in A tier, just beneath Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. That's just how I feel. Next up, the most recent releases as of the time of making this video, Sword and Shield. Where do I start with Generation 8? Man, I have no clue. These games seem to have just gotten everyone in the Pokemon community in some sort of tussle. Me? I loved them. I thought the music was great. I thought the battling was incredible. I also believed that Dynamax, as this generation's gimmick, if you want to call it, was also really incredible. I think a lot of the Galarian Pokemon and Galarian forms are really creative and interesting designs, and I love a lot of them. Am I upset that the Pokedex was cut dramatically? A little bit. Am I upset that the animations are not as good as some people would have hoped? Yes, a little bit. But do I think those points alone are enough to detract from how good I feel like this game is? I don't think so. Unfortunately, yes, it does suck that they had to cut corners for this game. Would we have gotten a better game if Game Freak had more time and better resources to make Sword and Shield? Probably, but we'll never know. All we can do is judge the product that we got. Personally, I think Sword and Shield are really good, and because of that, I think Sword and Shield deserve to be an A tier. Let's go ahead and move on before I make anyone else incredibly upset by my possibly controversial opinions. We have Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Generation 4 Johto remakes. Here we go. Heart Gold and Soul Silver kind of suck, but not as much as Gold and Silver. I think Heart Gold and Soul Silver are pretty good remakes. They kind of nail what a remake is meant to do. They update the game, make it look better, introduce new mechanics, but they did not do enough. A large portion of the same problems that Gold, Silver, and Crystal suffered, which is weak Pokemon, weak trainers, slow story, slow pacing, and boring story, admittedly. These same problems also appear in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Do I think they're fun games? Of course. I remember playing these games all the time when I was a kid. I love being able to play through Johto and Kanto, and I still love that. That doesn't automatically wash away the core fundamental problems of these games that I do believe they have. But I'm not going to rant too much about Generation 2 because we already went over that. I do think Heart Gold and Soul Silver deserve a nice B tier just beneath Sun and Moon. Moving on, we finally get to tackle the original Hoenn Generation 3 trio. Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire. Now for clarification, I do believe Emerald is the best version of 3, and it was the version of the 3 that I played the most, but I also have fond memories of playing Ruby as a child. However, for the sake of ease, I'm mostly going to be talking about my experiences with Emerald. I think Generation 3 did a lot of good things for the Pokemon series, and Emerald is just really a highlight of this. It's an incredible game. I think the Legendary is awesome. I think the story is really fun. I think the Hoenn region is extremely fun to explore, even if it is 90% water. All in all, Emerald is actually going to sit up in S tier for me. That does bring us to the fact that I do not believe Ruby and Sapphire are close to this. I do think Ruby and Sapphire are good games, yes, but do I believe that they are close to Emerald? No. So for that reason, I'm going to have to put Ruby and Sapphire in the high B tier. And honestly, maybe I'm putting too much stock in how much Emerald changed in the game, but overall, I do really think that Emerald is a really good game. Maybe it borders on A tier a little bit too much, but overall, it's one of those games that I just always come back to. I always have fun playing, and I can never complain about really anything in the game. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next games. Platinum, Diamond, and Pearl. Just like the Hoenn games, I think the definitive third version, Platinum here, is going to be far better than Diamond Pearl, but that does not discredit how good I think Diamond Pearl is. I think they're so good that they will sit in B tier, just beneath Ruby and Sapphire and just above Sun and Moon. Platinum is the first game that I consider myself to have fully played, and is one of the games that I have the fondest childhood memories of playing. I think the Sinnoh region is incredible. I do think that Generation 4 suffers from slow gameplay mechanics, but it is something that you can kind of look past to actually enjoy the game as a whole and what it offers. And what it offers is a fun and engaging story. It offers a lot of incredible Pokemon and a new mechanic in the physical special split that makes even previously used Pokemon really good and really usable and super viable, especially with new evolutions. I just think Sinnoh and Generation 4 are incredible. I think Giratina is an awesome mascot Pokemon, and overall, I couldn't sing my praises of Platinum enough. And because of these reasons, I feel like Platinum deserves a spot in the S tier. And that's that. This is my cohesive and current tier list of all the Pokemon main series games. Hopefully I said something in this video that you agree with. And if I did, leave a like down below. And if I said something that you disagree with, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear some of your opinions as well. If you managed to make it this far, then remember to subscribe. It helps both of us out and lets you know when I'm uploading next. And until next time, see you guys then.